Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest story known to exist. The oldest existing versions of this poem dates back to 2000 BC in Sumerian cuneiform, while a complete version dates back to 700 BC in the Akkadian language. Even though the texts themselves were lost for thousands of years, the tale still spread through to Europe and Asia. Even the Greeks and the Romans mentioned King Gilgamesh as late as 200 AD. The story was rediscovered in 1839 by a British archaeologist, Austin Laird, leading to the uncovering of much of the lost Mesopotamian civilizations. So without further ado, let's get into this epic tale. The prologue of the Epic of Gilgamesh starts by introducing us to the hero and his parents. Lady Wildcow, Nin's son, was Gilgamesh's mother, a minor goddess that was known for her wisdom. Lugalbanda was known as Gilgamesh's father, but we don't know 100% if that's true, as there isn't much mention of him. Gilgamesh was a demigod, part human and part god. He was the king of Uruk, and built grand outer and inner walls that surrounded the city. He was said to have established stunning temples of Anu, the god of the heavens, and his daughter Ishtar, the goddess of war and love. The story begins with Gilgamesh. He is all-powerful, and takes whatever he wants from his people, and crushes anyone who gets in his way. The old men of Uruk criticize Gilgamesh by saying a king is supposed to protect his people, like a shepherd, not pester them like a wild ox. The gods hear their concerns, and tell the goddess of creation, Araru, that since she made Gilgamesh, she must create someone strong enough to challenge him. Araru uses clay and her own spit and forms it into a man named Enkidu. Enkidu lives in the wilderness with the animals. An important physical trait of Enkidu is his hairiness. Eventually, a hunter sees the wild man at a watering hole. Out of fear, he runs to his house to tell his father about the man, the most powerful of the land. The hunter tells his father that the wild man has disturbed his traps and filled his pits, and now he cannot fulfill his purpose as a hunter. The hunter's father tells his son that he should head to Uruk and ask King Gilgamesh if he could provide a prostitute to seduce the wild man. This plan works, and Enkidu and the prostitute do the deed for 6 days and 7 nights. When Enkidu's wild tendencies are satisfied, he goes back to the animals, but they do not accept him back, as they do not see him as their own and run away from him. Enkidu tries to convince the animals to accept him back, but he has become weaker and can no longer run as fast as he could before. He didn't know what to do, only to go back to the prostitute. The prostitute comforts him and tells of the wonders that he will find in the city of Uruk. She tells him of the food, the festivals, and the king, Gilgamesh, that uses his own people. As soon as he heard about Gilgamesh, he was eager to meet him and challenge him to a contest of strength. The prostitute tells Enkidu that Gilgamesh is too strong and could not win, but said that Gilgamesh is lonely and wishes for a friend. It turns out that Gilgamesh has previously had 2 dreams about Enkidu. In the first dream, a meteor lands in a field somewhere outside Uruk. He is drawn to the rock, and using his great strength, gives it to his mother and his son, handling it with great care. In the second dream, Gilgamesh finds an axe lying in the street. He was drawn to the axe, and out of appreciation for it, takes it back to his mother, handling it with great care. Gilgamesh's mother tells him that both the rock and the axe symbolizes a man that he will soon challenge, a man that would become his most trusted friend, and a person who had the guidance and power to save Gilgamesh. The temple prostitute shares a pair of garments with Enkidu. These are the first clothes he has ever worn. Then the prostitute leads him on the way to the city of Uruk. On one of the nights, both of them stop at the shepherd's camp. The herdsmen are amazed by Enkidu's size, strength, and good looks. They serve him plates of cooked food, bread, and beer. At first glance, Enkidu does not recognize these objects as food. Only until now he has eaten grass and drank animal's milk. He was hesitant at first, but the prostitute urges him to eat. He gulps it all down and starts to sing. He washes with oil and gets new clothes. He even picks up a sword and guards the shepherd's flocks to keep away the wolves and lions. One day, a stranger comes to the shepherd's camp carrying a decorative dish. Enkidu asks the prostitute to find out who the man was and where he was going. The man tells both of them that he is bringing offerings to a wedding ceremony in Uruk. The groom is not King Gilgamesh, but the man says that Gilgamesh gets to lie with the bride before the husband because Gilgamesh can take whatever he wants because no one can endure his great power. Enkidu is furious and decides to go to Uruk and challenge Gilgamesh, as Enkidu is sure that the king of Uruk is no match for him. When Enkidu makes it to Uruk, Enkidu draws a crowd around him, calling him their champion. Enkidu firmly stands in front of the bride's bedchamber when Gilgamesh tries to force his way in. Both Gilgamesh and Enkidu lock into combat, grappling through the streets, shaking the city as they fight. Eventually, Gilgamesh, proving to be stronger, wrestles Enkidu to the ground. They both forgive each other. Enkidu then admits that Gilgamesh deserves to be king. Gilgamesh's mother gives their new friendship her blessing, proclaiming that Enkidu will be Gilgamesh's trustworthy companion. Both Gilgamesh and Enkidu search for a commendable adventure for both of them to take on. Enkidu tells of a terrible monster named Humbaba, who Enlil, the god of earth, wind, and air, created to guard the distant cedar forest that was banned to humans. Gilgamesh can't wait to take on the beast, while Enkidu warns him that the demon is invincible. Gilgamesh is not deterred, as even if he dies, he would still be remembered for his bravery. Gilgamesh convinced Enkidu that if they managed to kill Humbaba, they would be famous. Enkidu joins in on the adventure, and they prepare to order new weapons, such as massive swords, axes, and bows, for their journey. Before the two heroes set out, they tell the people of Uruk that they are going to slay Humbaba and cut down the cedar trees the monster protects. The elders of the city are furious and tell Gilgamesh that he is going overboard and misjudges Humbaba's strength. They told Gilgamesh if he is still keen on his task, that he should not only rely on his great strength and look to Enkidu, for he knows the wilderness best. They also told him to appease the sun god Shemesh for protection, which he did. Gilgamesh and Enkidu then make their way to Gilgamesh's mother, Nisun, for her blessing as well. She praises Shemesh's protection and adopts Enkidu as her son. Gilgamesh and Enkidu are now truly brothers. The two heroes listen to more prayers, rituals, sacrifices, as well as more warnings from the elders. Once all the final preparations are finished, the two heroes set off on their adventure. In 3 days of traveling, they cover 150 leagues, which is the equivalent of 724 kilometers. That would take the average man 3 weeks to walk that far. They finally reach the forest and pause to plan things out. They stand at the forest gates in amazement as they take in all their surroundings. They see a massive mountain in the distance, the place where the gods are installed. They build a small structure to shelter them from the wind and go to sleep. In the middle of the night, Gilgamesh has a dream where a mountain fell on top of him. Gilgamesh explains the dream to Enkidu, and he said that the mountain represented Humbaba, who would lie on the plain like a mountain. Days pass as they make their way through the forest. On their way, they make offerings to Shemesh. Night falls, and they are ready for sleep. Gilgamesh wakes up from another dream. In this dream, a wild bull attacked him when he was helpless on the ground. Then someone offered him water. Gilgamesh explained this to Enkidu, and he said that the dream is another dream of good luck. He says the bull is not Humbaba, but the god Shemesh, who blesses him by fighting him, and the person giving him water was his father. The two heroes continued to walk, covering hundreds of leagues. It rained that night, but they eventually fell asleep. In the third dream, Gilgamesh sees the earth shake, with thunder and lightning, while fire and ash fall from the sky. Again, Enkidu interprets this dream as luck, but Gilgamesh is still scared, so he prays to Shemesh, asking for his protection. Shemesh answers him back and explains that both heroes are experiencing the effects of Humbaba's garments. Humbaba has 7 of these garments, with each layer spreading fear. Shemesh tells them both that Humbaba is only wearing one at the moment, and if Humbaba wears all 7, the monster would be invincible, so the time to strike is now or never. The heroes finally reach the mountain of the gods, where it is forbidden to all humans. Both of them get their axes and cut down a few trees. They then hear Humbaba's roar. The next thing they know, they are fighting Humbaba. The battle intensifies, and Gilgamesh prays to Shemesh in desperation. It works, and Shemesh releases 13 storms at Humbaba. Humbaba gets stunned allowing Gilgamesh to get the upper hand, defeating Humbaba. Humbaba then pleads for mercy. He tells Gilgamesh that if he were to spare him, he would be his servant. In the beginning, Gilgamesh considers it, but Enkidu, on the other hand, tries to convince Gilgamesh to end the monster quickly. Humbaba blames Enkidu for being harsh and claims that Enkidu is just jealous and scared that Humbaba can replace him with his friendliness. Humbaba then intimidates them by saying that he is a servant of Enlil, the god of earth, wind, and air, which surpasses Shemesh by greater divinity. If Gilgamesh were to kill him, they would surely be cursed. Enkidu then tells Gilgamesh to hurry up and kill Humbaba, as there is only a matter of time before Enlil catches on to what they are doing and stops them. Gilgamesh then, realizing the fame they would gain if they were to kill the monster and steal his cedars, promptly ended Humbaba. Gilgamesh then makes a new gate for the city of Uruk out of the tallest tree and fashions a raft where they can float back to the city, taking Humbaba's head with them. When the two heroes get back to Uruk, they clean themselves from the battle. Gilgamesh gets a clean robe and looks handsome to the point the goddess Ishtar takes notice. Ishtar begs Gilgamesh to be her husband. She promises to give Gilgamesh anything he has ever wanted, because he has nothing to give to a goddess that has everything. He says that her desire for him is just in the heat of the moment, and she will soon lose interest. He also tells her that he knows how cruel she can be, such as sending her husband to the underworld, torture, and turning other lovers into animals. Gilgamesh asks, why would he expect to do any better? Ishtar is furious. She goes back to her father, Anu, the god of the heavens, and her mother, Antum, and demands that they use the bull of heaven. She demands this so she can watch the bull rip Gilgamesh apart. Anu does not understand her daughter's anger, as all the things Gilgamesh said about her was true. Ishtar becomes angrier as she threatens to let all the dead people out of the underworld so they can feast on the living. Anu, still hesitant of giving in, warns her that the bull will unleash 7 years of famine. Ishtar was aware of this and told Anu that she planned supplies for the people of Uruk, and Anu eventually gives in to her demands. Ishtar releases the bull, and the city of Uruk shakes as the bull falls from the sky. The impact left cracks in the earth, in which 100 men fell in and died. The bull roars and more cracks open, and another 100 men fall to their demise. The third time this happens, Enkidu attacks the bull. Enkidu calls out to Gilgamesh, and he joins into the battle. Eventually, Enkidu seized the right moment and grabbed the bull's tail and held it down, while Gilgamesh finished the bull with his sword. They then cut out the bull's heart and offer it as a sacrifice to Shemesh. Ishtar climbs onto the walls of Uruk and spits curses at the two heroes. Enkidu picks up one of the bull's thighs and throws it at her, shouting that if she comes any closer, he will do the same to her. Ishtar and her followers then mourn the loss of the bull. Later, Gilgamesh claims the bull's head as his trophy. The heroes clean the blood off them in the Euphrates and ride around the streets of Uruk, claiming their victory. That same night, Enkidu wakes up from a disturbing nightmare. In the dream, the gods all met to decide their fate. The god Anu declared that they must punish one of the heroes for killing Humbaba, the bull of heaven, and chopping down the tallest tree in the forbidden woods. The dream becomes true as Enkidu falls ill. Filled with despair, he curses the cedar gate they made in the forbidden woods. Gilgamesh is hysterical as he said he pleaded to the gods. This of course was no use. Gilgamesh promised Enkidu to build a great monument, even better than the cedar gate, a giant statue made all out of gold. Enkidu calls out to Shemesh. Enkidu curses the hunter who first spotted him as a wild man. He curses the temple prostitute that seduced him, ruining his friendship with the animals. Shemesh answers back, "Why would you curse the prostitute? Without her, you would have never tasted the rich foods of the city, never worn good-looking clothes, and most of all, you would have never met King Gilgamesh, your greatest friend." In fact, Shemesh told Enkidu that King Gilgamesh would wander the earth in grief without you. Enkidu suffers for 12 more days, and then his life finally comes to an end. The death of his best friend destroys Gilgamesh. Everyone mourns his death. Like Gilgamesh promised, he ordered the statue to be built to honor Enkidu. Gilgamesh left his rich clothes and donned animal skins, leaving the city to wander the world with no purpose. Eventually, Gilgamesh, fearing death, decided to seek out Utnapishtim, a person who survived the Great Flood that almost ended life on Earth. Utnapishtim became the only mortal to ever be gifted immortality by the gods. Gilgamesh thought that the immortal man can tell him how he could escape death's clutches. The immortal man lives far, far away, where no mortal has ever been. After much journeying, Gilgamesh arrives at the twin-headed mountain called Mashu. The tops of the peaks touch the heavens, and the bottom of the mountain leads down to the underworld. At its gates were two monsters, a scorpion man and his wife, that guard the gates. The male scorpion monster asks why he has come this far to the mountain that no human has ever journeyed to. Gilgamesh explains his quest for immortality. The scorpion man explains that the immortal man lives on the other side of the mountain. He also tells him that there is a tunnel that runs to the other side, but it would take 12 double hours to cross and was pitch black. He said no human could survive the journey, and they cannot let him through. Gilgamesh then pleads to let him through, and they concede and tell him to proceed with caution. Gilgamesh endures the darkness of the caves, and on the 11th double hour sees the light at the end of the tunnel. At the end of the 12th double hour, he makes it out of the cave, stunned by a beautiful garden of fruit and flowers. Beyond the garden was a great sea. Gilgamesh spots a tavern. By the edge of the sea, he sees Suduri, a barmaid, looking towards the sea. Suduri looks back to see a crazy, ragged-looking man with animal skins for clothes, and runs into the tavern, closes the door, and bars it up. Gilgamesh bangs on the door and says he is Gilgamesh and will break down the door. The barmaid asks why he looks like a criminal. Gilgamesh explains that he is grieving his best friend's death. The barmaid opens the door and invites him in for food, drink, and a new pair of clothes. Gilgamesh refuses, as he sees this as distracting him from his quest. The barmaid tells Gilgamesh that the sun god Shemesh crosses the sea every day, and that no human has ever been able to do so. She said that even if he could get past the treacherous waters, he could not get past the poison waters of death, as he would need Urshanabi, the immortal man's boatman, to get across. The barmaid realizes that she cannot persuade Gilgamesh from stopping, so she tells him the directions of Urshanabi's house that is located deep in the forest. Gilgamesh sets off for the forest. When he reaches the boatman's place, Gilgamesh sees stone golems and attacks them. When Gilgamesh meets Urshanabi, he asks if he could take him to the immortal man. The boatman agrees, but says Gilgamesh has made the task more difficult as he smashed the stone golems that moved and protected the boat. Urshanabi orders Gilgamesh to go into the forest and cut down 120 poles, so he did. The boatman then told Gilgamesh to fit the poles with rings and then cover them with pitch, and they set off for their journey. The two traveled for 3 days, which would have taken a regular vote 2 months. They finally arrive at the waters of death. This is when the boatman tells Gilgamesh to use the punting poles, but to make sure not to touch the water. Gilgamesh uses his inhuman strength and breaks all 112 poles. When the last pole breaks, he takes off his animal skin that he was wearing and holds it like a sail. They both finally make it to the shore. The old man is waiting for them. They both get out of the boat. The old man asks Gilgamesh to explain himself, and Gilgamesh tells him what he told Suduri and Urshanabi. The old man asks why he grieves about immortality, as nothing lives forever. Gilgamesh realizes that the old man is the immortal man. Gilgamesh poses the question, how does one become an immortal god, and can it be done to him? The old man tells the story of how he became immortal. It began long ago, when he was king of the city Shuruppak. It was a prosperous city on the banks of the Euphrates. He says that the gods met in a secret council. The god Enlil orders a great flood to wipe out humankind. Ea, the wisest of all the gods, cunningly betrayed the gods and warned him of the gods' plans. In order to prepare for the flood, Ea told him to build a massive boat with 6 decks and load it up with 2 of every living thing on earth, including his family and belongings. He asked Ea, what should he tell his people? And Ea said to lie to them and tell the people that Enlil hates him and wants him to leave. When the great storm came, the boat was prepared, and eventually the boat breached on a mountain peak. After 7 long days, he let loose a dove to find land. The dove could not find land and came back. He released a swallow, and it too could not find land and returned. He then released a raven, and the raven never came back, meaning he was close to shore. When he reaches the shore, he prepares a ritual and summons the gods. Since the Great Flood was Enlil's idea and never really discussed it with the other gods, some of the other gods would not forgive him for his actions. Once Enlil made it to the ritual, he spotted the boat and became angry as he wanted to wipe out all humans. Ea revealed himself and said that if he wanted to punish some of the unworthy humans, he should have sent a plague, wolves, and famine to kill them and let the good people live, and that his flood was unjust. Enlil, realizing his wrongs, made the old man and his wife kneel and bless them, turning them into gods for saving humanity, but only they deserved that gift. The story finishes, and Gilgamesh wonders if he would be worthy enough to become a god. The old man tells Gilgamesh that if he goes a week without sleeping, he would pass the test. Gilgamesh accepts the challenge, but as soon as he does, he falls asleep. For each day Gilgamesh sleeps, the old man's wife bakes a loaf of bread. On the 7th day, the old man wakes him up. Gilgamesh denies that he fell asleep and said he came close to. The old man shows him loaves of bread from day 1 being moldy to the 7th loaf being fresh. Gilgamesh feels depressed as he now knows he would not escape death. The old man tells the boatman and Gilgamesh they can never come here again, but before Gilgamesh leaves, he orders Gilgamesh to clean himself up and wear royal clothes so he can return to the city in honor. The old man's wife asks her husband if they could give him anything to take back to the city. The old man tells Gilgamesh of one of the gods' secrets. He says there is a thorny plant that grows at the bottom of the sea that has the power to make the old young again. Once at sea, Gilgamesh ties stones to his feet, and once he sees the thorny plant, he cuts the stones and goes back to the surface. Once they make it back to shore, Gilgamesh tells the boatman that he will share this plant with the elders of Uruk and then use it on himself to be young again. One night, when they both stop for camp, Gilgamesh takes a swim in a pool of refreshing cold water. As he does this, a snake smells the plant and eats it. Gilgamesh spots the snake shedding its skin, becoming young again, and sits down beside the pool and cries, knowing that that was his last chance. The boatman and Gilgamesh travel back to the city of Uruk. There, Gilgamesh shows the boatman the wonders of Uruk, and the story ends there. So what is the moral of the story? In my opinion, at the beginning of the story, Gilgamesh is all-powerful, but he has no compassion for others. At the end of the tale, he realizes that death is unavoidable, and instead of gaining immortality, he gains compassion, the one thing he was missing, and became a better king. We can see this when he wanted to give part of the magical plant to the elders of the city. It is amazing how the tale leaves us with Gilgamesh in despair after losing all hope, and then transitions into him finding the truth and admiring the great city he built. Thanks for watching. What do you guys think about the Epic of Gilgamesh? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the content, leave a like. If you haven't already, subscribe for more interesting historical content. And I'll see you guys in the next video.